Victarion Greyjoy is a large and powerful man with a broad chest. His black hair is flaked with grey. He's a capable commander and a fierce warrior in battle, but he also has a calm demeanour outside of it, thinking of his enemies who show bravery with great respect. He wears full plate armour while sailing, rare for an Ironborn, because he has no fear of drowning. George R. R. Martin described Victarion as dumb as a stump and a bit of a brute. His armour consists of black boiled leather with a heavy grain chainmail and lobster plate, and his helm is in the shape of a kraken. He carries a long sword and a dirk, but prefers to use an axe. Victarion's cloak is made of 9 layers of gold cloth, sewn like the kraken of his house. His 2 oldest brothers, Balon and Euron Greyjoy, convinced their father, Quillan, Lord of the Iron Islands, to join Robert's rebellion against the Targaryens. They joined the rebellion quite late and raided the Reach during the war. After Quillan was killed in the battle at the Manda, the new lord, Balon, returned to the Iron Islands with his younger brothers. Victarion recognised the greatness of Balon and followed him loyally. He commanded the great fleet constructed by Balon during the Greyjoy rebellion. During the rebellion, using a plan Euron had concocted, they sailed to Lannisport and burned the Lannister fleet while it was at anchor. Victarion is said to have tossed the first torch on the flagship of Lord Tywin Lannister. Later in the rebellion, the Iron Fleet was smashed by Stannis Baratheon in a sea battle off Fair Isle, during which Victarion's younger brother, Aeron's vessel, the Golden Storm, was chopped in half by Stannis' warship Fury. After the failed rebellion, Victarion continued to serve faithfully as Lord Captain. He had married 3 times. His first wife died in childbirth, birthing a stillborn daughter. His second wife was stricken by the pox. His third was seduced and impregnated by his brother Euron, which drove Victarion to beat her to death to retain his honour. Only the great taboo against kinslaying kept Victarion from doing the same to Euron. He has not married since, nor has he forgiven Euron, who was forced into exile by Balon in 297 AD. During a clash of kings in preparation for the invasion of the north planned by Balon, Victarion loans his spearman, Rymel Stormdunk, to his nephew Theon Greyjoy, who is tasked to raid the Stony Shore. Victarion later attends a feast at Pike's Great Hall with his brothers, Balon and Aeron. After, he is sent with the main strength of the Iron Fleet to take Moat Cailin by the now King Balon. Moat Cailin falls to the Ironborn surprise attack. Theon intends to hold Meera and Jojen Reed captive to prevent their father, Howland Reed, from attacking Victarion's men, but the Reed children vanish from Winterfell along with Bran and Rickon Stark. Later, during the events of A Storm of Swords, when Robb Stark is told of Balon's murder on Pike and the return of his exiled brother Euron Greyjoy, he wonders if he abandoned Moat Cailin to claim the throne for himself. While at Moat Cailin, Victarion wears mail leather day and night in protection from the Crannog men. He leaves a token force to defend Moat Cailin under the command of Rolf Kenning and returns to the Iron Islands with his fleet to help decide on the succession of the next Iron King. During a Feast for Crows, we now see from Victarion's point of view. Victarion makes a claim to the Seastone chair as Balon's brother and second in command. He refuses the offer of his niece Asha Greyjoy to share rule with him as king, with her as his hand, and she could be seen as the rightful heir. Victarion makes a strong claim at the Kingsmoot and does gain some support, but the crowd ultimately favours Euron and his bold and lavish promises. Despite his hatred for Euron, Victarion's obedience and dutiful nature keeps him following his king's orders. Victarion leads the taking of the shields, slaughtering unarmoured sailors and winning a duel with Sir Talbot Serry, the son of Lord Osbert Serry. But during this duel, his hand is wounded. After his victory, Victarion watches helplessly as Euron steals many of his trusted comrades away from him by giving them titles on the Shield Islands. Victarion also deplores the cruelty Euron displays towards the slain lords, women and children. Apparently, oblivious to Victarion's hatred, Euron summons Victarion to a private meeting in Lord Hewitt's castle and asks him to find Daenerys Targaryen and deliver Euron's marriage proposal to her. The new Iron King explains that Victarion will receive the Seastone chair once Euron claims the Iron Throne. Victarion agrees, but secretly plans on courting Daenerys for himself. During a dance with dragons, Victarion's Iron Fleet of over 90 ships splits into 3 squadrons and sets sail for Meereen. With him aboard the Iron Victory is the Dusky Woman, a gift of Euron's. She is comely but mute. On the journey, Victarion nearly loses half his ships, though he also gains some ships back by capturing and seizing several trading vessels and their cargo. Victarion's wounded hand continues to trouble him during this time, and he suspects that Cerwyn, the maester that Euron sent to accompany him to Meereen, is poisoning him. During the voyage, a red priest of R'hllor named Moqorro is discovered clinging to wreckage out at sea. The crew wants him killed, but Moqorro convinces Victarion to allow him to treat his wounded hand. Behind closed doors, Moqorro apparently uses magic on Victarion's hand. When he emerges from his cabin, his hand is now charred and blackened. Moqorro, like Melisandre, can see the future in the flames and uses this magic to aid Victarion in his quest. For instance, Victarion orders his crew to kill Cerwyn following, as Mokoro had a vision that the Maester's death would bring the ship good winds. The Iron Victory's crew live in great fear of Mokoro and call him the Black Flame. Victarion makes offerings to both the Drown Gods and R'hllor. Mokoro also alerts Victarion that he has seen Daenerys married in the flames, but Victarion is unconcerned by this, stating that she would be not the first woman he had made a widow. Mokoro also tells Victarion that in order to bind Daenerys' dragons to the Iron Captain's will, he must claim Euron's Dragonhorn, Dragonbinder, with blood. Now, there is a sample chapter from the Winds of Winter from Victarion's point of view, but the information is subject to change, but in summary, it shows Victarion making blood sacrifices in an attempt to master Dragonbinder as he approaches the Battle of Meereen. Now, Victarion not being in the show, I put down to the way in which they decided to simplify the Ironborn arc and the massive amount of content that was cut from A Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons in order to fit the show into 8 seasons. I think him being cut damages Euron's character, as their relationship and dynamics interesting and would have given Euron much more depth than he had. I also think Victarion going and making an alliance with Dany makes much more sense than Yara and Theon in the show. On the whole, the Ironborn storyline and the Dornish storyline being missing from the show is much to its detriment. I do believe that them not doing it properly came back to bite them in the later seasons. However, I can see some fair reasons for him being cut. One of the main criticisms aimed at A Feast for Crows is how many new characters were introduced and the lack of established characters. This issue would have also been a problem for the show, with many of the main cast even needing to have far less screen time to fit these new characters in. The solutions of extending the series past 8 seasons could have mitigated this and given more time to establish new characters, but as we know, D&D wanted to be away from the show as soon as possible, so this didn't happen.